The city lights of Beijing shimmer against the night sky, the hum of traffic echoing beneath a billboard where Xiao Zhan's face glows like a constellation. Beneath that calm smile is a man whose life has become a breathtaking dance between two worlds, music and acting, each demanding, each merciless, and yet each conquered with quiet grace. When Xiao Zhan walks onto a film set, it's as if the air itself adjusts. Crew members pause, cameras shift, and time seems to stretch. He doesn't command attention through ego, but through energy, an unspoken rhythm that hums in sync with every heartbeat on set. He's not merely performing, he's living the moment, sculpting emotion out of silence. But as the director calls, cut, the scene doesn't end. Somewhere beyond the studio walls, another Xiao Zhan is already stirring. The musician, the vocalist whose songs climb the charts and echo through concert halls like whispered confessions. The transformation is seamless, almost impossible. How does one man carry the weight of two careers and make both shine like constellations in perfect orbit? It starts with silence. Xiao Zhan has often said that creativity begins in stillness. Long before the bright lights, before the applause, there's a moment where he sits in a quiet room, guitar in hand, feeling the world breathe. The melody comes to him not as sound, but as memory, a fragment of a role he played, a scene he once lived, a pain he once buried. Music, to Xiao Zhan, isn't separate from acting. It's the echo of his characters, the afterglow of emotions that refuse to fade when the cameras stop rolling. Take The Untamed, the drama that turned him into an international phenomenon. As Wei Wuxian, Xiao Zhan wasn't just acting, he was unraveling the soul of a character torn between loyalty and love, rebellion and righteousness. On set, he'd spend hours perfecting a single glance, a fleeting smile that could carry the weight of an entire scene. But after filming wrapped, something lingered. The emotions were too raw, too alive. And so he turned to music, not as escape, but as continuation. Songs like Spotlight and Made to Love weren't just singles. They were unspoken sequels to the characters he'd brought to life. Picture this. It's 3 a.m. in a dimly lit studio. The city outside is asleep, but Xiao Zhan is wide awake, headphones wrapped around his head, a soft melody pulsing through the speakers. His voice, steady but filled with emotion, flows like a confession to the night. Between takes, he scribbles notes in a small notebook, lyrics that intertwine with lines from his scripts. Acting feeds his music. Music refuels his acting. The two are not rivals, they are reflections. There was a time when the balance seemed impossible. During his early days in the industry, Xiao Zhan faced skepticism from both sides. Some said he should focus on one craft. Others doubted whether someone so gentle in demeanor could command the depth of a serious actor. Yet he smiled through it all, his response always humble, always steady. Why must I choose one world when both are part of me? He learned discipline from his struggles. Days often started before sunrise, hours of filming under blinding studio lights, followed by nights in recording booths or live rehearsals. There were moments when exhaustion blurred the lines between characters and songs, where he'd close his eyes and not remember if he'd just finished a scene or a chorus. But Xiao Zhan thrives in that blur. For him, creativity lives in the spaces where boundaries dissolve. One unforgettable story from a film set reveals just how deep that dedication runs. During the filming of a particularly emotional scene, Xiao Zhan was asked to cry real tears, not acted ones. The director gave him time, expecting he'd need to prepare. But Xiao Zhan stood silently, breathing slowly, and then, without a word, tears streamed down his face. No cue, no trick. Just truth. When asked later how he did it, he simply said, "I thought of a melody that never found its ending." That's Xiao Zhan's magic. To him, every emotion is music. Every song is a story. Every story is a song waiting to be sung. Off-screen, his life is surprisingly simple. He's often seen sketching in cafes or walking quietly through crowded streets with a mask and cap, blending into anonymity. He paints, he listens to soft jazz, he writes lyrics on napkins. And yet, Even in those quiet moments, the balance continues. Inspiration can strike anywhere, a glance from a stranger, a sound from a subway musician, and suddenly, a new idea blooms. By the time he returns home, there's already a song forming in his head and a character shaping in his mind. Fans often describe him as a living paradox, gentle but strong, reserved yet magnetic, humble but impossibly radiant. His artistry mirrors this contradiction. On stage, under bright lights, he radiates power, every movement deliberate, every note charged with emotion. But behind the scenes, he's the calm center of a storm, a perfectionist who rewrites lyrics late into the night, a craftsman who studies old films frame by frame to refine his technique. There's a reason Xiao Zhan's performances resonate so deeply. He doesn't just play emotions, he translates them. In acting, he channels his understanding of rhythm, pacing, and tone, skills sharpened through music. In music, he borrows from the empathy, storytelling, and nuance that acting demands. It's a beautiful feedback loop where one art form elevates the other. When he stands on stage during a concert, lights cascading in a sea of gold, he's no longer just an actor who sings or a singer who acts. He's a storyteller who paints with sound and silence. The crowd sways to his voice, but if you look closely, you'll see a flicker in his eyes, the same intensity he carries on camera. He's performing, yes, but he's also remembering. Each lyric tied to a story he once lived through acting, each note carrying an echo from a scene long wrapped. Behind the fame, there's also resilience forged by trials. Xiao Zhan has faced storms in his career, public scrutiny, online controversies, immense pressure from both industries. Yet each time, he responds not with anger, but with creation. He channels chaos into art, pain into melody. That ability to turn adversity into beauty is perhaps his greatest form of balance. In one of his interviews, Xiao Zhan said, "Music is how I talk to myself. Acting is how I talk to others." Those words reveal the blueprint of his journey. On screen, he becomes a mirror for human emotion, letting audiences see pieces of themselves in his performances. Through music, he becomes the echo of those emotions, translating them into rhythm and poetry. Balancing acting and music isn't about time management for Xiao Zhan, it's about emotional symmetry. He treats his career not as two paths, but as one continuous river flowing in different directions. Some days, that river rushes through film sets filled with costumes and scripts. Other days, it flows through studios humming with melodies and microphones. But it's the same current, driven by passion, guided by purpose. As dawn breaks after another long day, the actor-singer stands on the rooftop of a high-rise, gazing over the city that never sleeps. The first rays of sunlight touch his face. He closes his eyes, breathes in, and hums softly, a tune no one else has heard yet. Maybe it's a new song. Maybe it's the stage lights dim, the camera shutters fade, and for a fleeting heartbeat the world seems to stop. Xiao Zhan stands at the edge of that silence, half musician, half actor, wholly artist. The applause still rings behind him, yet he's already somewhere else, caught between two universes that constantly pull at his soul. Cut to a quiet dressing room. Mirrors lined with tiny bulbs, steam rising from a cup of tea gone cold. His phone buzzes with messages, producers, directors, music coordinators, all demanding time he doesn't have. He stares at the reflection before him, then smiles faintly. "I'll make time," he whispers. That's the secret to balancing it all. He doesn't find time, he creates it. From the first day Xiao Zhan stepped into the entertainment world, balance wasn't a luxury, it was survival. Acting required him to surrender to characters so completely that sometimes, after filming, he'd walk out of costume and still feel their emotions clawing at his chest. Music gave those feelings an exit. It was his private translator for everything left unsaid. Imagine the camera panning to his apartment late at night. Script pages lie scattered across the couch, and beside them, a notebook filled with unfinished lyrics. The faint hum of a guitar drifts through the air. Every note he plays seems to echo a line from the script, a whispered bridge between fiction and feeling. For Xiao Zhan, acting and music are not two parallel tracks, they are one continuous melody that shifts keys depending on the moment. When he's on a film set, his musician's sensitivity guides him. Between takes, he taps out rhythms on his thigh, measuring the pacing of dialogue the same way a composer times a beat. Acting is rhythm, he once said quietly to a co-star. If you can hear the pulse of a scene, you'll never lose the truth of it. His directors see it too, how he listens to silence, how his pauses are perfectly timed, like rests in a score. Then the scene cuts again, to a concert arena packed with thousands of fans. The lights rise in a golden wave, and Xiao Zhan steps into it with the calm of someone who knows chaos intimately. The microphone catches the first breath before he sings. There it is again, that rhythm. You can almost see him slip into the story of the song as though stepping into a new character. Acting fuels his music. Music recharges his acting. But balance isn't always beautiful. There are nights when the two worlds collide. A dawn call time after a midnight rehearsal. A voice strained from singing but needed for dialogue. The exhaustion, the deadlines, the unrelenting spotlight. Any lesser artist might crumble. Xiao Zhan bends instead of breaking. He centers himself in tiny rituals, green tea, deep breaths, sketching small drawings in a travel notebook. The chaos quiets, the energy resets, and he begins again. One unforgettable moment happened during a drama shoot abroad. The production schedule was brutal: rain, night scenes, endless retakes. Between setups, he sat beneath an umbrella, soaked and shivering. A crew member handed him his phone. A demo track awaited his approval. Most actors would have postponed, but Xiao Zhan slipped on his headphones, closed his eyes, and listened. Minutes later, he hummed a soft harmony into the night, the rain syncing perfectly with the melody. It wasn't multitasking, it was alchemy, turning exhaustion into art. That's the essence of his balance. Transformation. Every challenge becomes raw material. When he's heartbroken from a scene, he writes. When he's elated from a song, he acts. He carries both crafts like twin lanterns through the dark, each one illuminating the other. Even his team has learned to follow this rhythm. Managers schedule breaks knowing they might vanish into creativity. Bandmates understand that a new song could be born from an actor's script. Directors know his empathy runs deep because he's lived every emotion twice, once on screen, once in song. There's another scene that defines him perfectly. Picture Xiao Zhan at a soundcheck before a live show. The arena is empty except for echoing footsteps and the faint buzz of speakers. He walks to the center of the stage, closes his eyes, and begins to sing softly. No microphone, no audience, just pure voice. His sound engineer watches in silence. When the final note fades, Xiao Zhan opens his eyes and smiles. Now it's ready, he says. What he meant wasn't the equipment, it was himself. He had tuned not just his voice, but his spirit. That same energy follows him to film sets. Before a big emotional scene, he isolates himself, humming lightly under his breath. Crew members think he's rehearsing lines. In truth, he's finding the music hidden inside the moment. Later, when the cameras roll, that hidden melody flows through every gesture. The result feels natural, effortless, and heartbreakingly real. Fans across continents feel this dual heartbeat. They hear his songs and see the stories he's acted in, noticing echoes between the two, the same vulnerability, the same truth. One fan once wrote online, his voice sounds like the eyes of his characters. It's poetic, but it's also accurate. That's how complete his fusion of art forms has become. Xiao Zhan's balance also comes from humility. In interviews, he downplays his success, insisting he's still learning to listen. Listening, there's that word again. He listens to his directors, to his bandmates, to silence, to himself. He treats life like an orchestra and knows that even the quietest note matters. Cut to one final montage. A dawn skyline, a guitar case leaning by a window, a script half open on a table. Xiao Zhan steps into frame, wearing a simple hoodie, headphones around his neck. He hums a few notes, checks his reflection, and walks toward the door. The day will demand both the actor and the musician, and he's ready to become both, seamlessly, sincerely, spectacularly. That's the miracle of Xiao Zhan's balance. It isn't a juggling act, it's a harmony. Acting and music are no longer separate instruments. They're chords of the same song, resonating through everything he does. So, as you watch his journey unfold, whether through a heartbreaking scene on screen or a powerful performance on stage, remember that every moment is part of one grand composition. Xiao Zhan doesn't just live between worlds. He connects them, proving that true artistry isn't about choosing one path, but about having the courage to walk both, in perfect rhythm.